I'd like to address my question to Dr. Madras, if I might, to begin with. Several witnesses who have appeared before this committee have told us that limited evidence about marijuana is because it is illegal. So we have limited evidence because it's illegal, and that the only way to increase our knowledge base on cannabis and accelerate research is to legalize it. As a researcher, which you are a researcher, I'm interested to hear your perspective on this question. If we legalize cannabis in Canada, can we expect a rush of new clinical trials, for example? And what has been the experience in the United States in this regard?
Thank you for those questions. I'd like to debunk that instantaneously because there are 25,000 manuscripts on cannabis currently in the literature. Anybody can do a PubMed search and find them. There is plenty of research on isolated cannabinoids as well as whole plant cannabis. I have never found the legal status of marijuana to interfere with research. I've conducted research in primates. I currently have a 5-year grant from the National Institutes on Health looking at THC and CBD cannabidiol in the ratios in terms of how they change the brain. And I can tell you, just to insert that piece of evidence into the record, what we're finding in preliminary data that have been presented in abstracts and meetings so far is that cannabidiol does have a profound mitigating effect on the effects of THC. THC is psychotomimetic. It produces psychosis. It can produce anxiety. It can produce intoxication. Cannabidiol has pretty much the opposite effects. It's not psychotomimetic. It's not addictive like THC is. It does not induce psychosis. In fact, there's some evidence that it's antipsychotic, and I can go on and on. It has anxiolytic effects as opposed to anxiogenic, and it is effective to some extent in damping seizures, and especially in subtypes of epilepsy in children, whereas THC can promote or decrease seizures depending on the individual. The ratio of THC to CBD has gone up to 90-1, as opposed to what it was originally in the wild plant form, which was somewhere around 3-1, 10-1, never 90-1. And what we're seeing in basic science is that that shift in ratio could have very detrimental effects on the developing adolescent brain. So in terms of getting back to your most important question, does scheduling and legalization, we haven't legalized heroin, and yet nobody has had any trouble doing the research on it. We haven't legalized marijuana. In fact, it still remains in Schedule 1, and I had a role to play in its reciting in that schedule in a landmark federal California case. And people continue to do the research. They continue to do THC changing ratios and what have you. People don't like the extra paperwork. There's one added step in paperwork compared to all scheduled drugs. That paperwork has in fact been, there is a movement to eliminate it. And from my perspective, that is simply a red herring, that you have to legalize a potentially harmful drug in order to study it. That just isn't the case from my perspective and from scientists that I'm familiar with who've been conducting research in it for decades. Aline Howlett and so on and so forth. Steve Childers, Alex Macrianis. I can name many scientists in the field who have not complained to me that this is a problem. I just want to refute one thing. We talk about the ratio of 9% addiction potential of marijuana versus 16% of alcohol. Those are very old data. Those are 1994 by Jim Anthony. The current data put out by Wilson Compton at the National Institute on Drug Abuse is more than 12% plus. And Deborah Hassine, who's one of the best epidemiologists at Columbia University, has the data that states that approximately 30% of current users have a cannabis use disorder in the United States, based on a large national survey.
Thank you very much. 5 minutes is up.
Okay, thanks.